For 2 millennia, a mystery has been woven into the fabric of history, an ancient prophecy shrouded, sealed, and waiting for its appointed time. Nations have risen and fallen, empires have come and gone, and yet this prophecy remained concealed. Until now, today, we stand on the threshold of revelation, one that speaks not only to America's destiny, but to a name that has reshaped the landscape of politics, faith, and freedom. This is not mere coincidence. It is a divine signal, pointing to where we've been, where we are, and where we are headed. Stay with me, because what you'll hear may challenge you, stir you, and even ignite a hope for the future you never thought possible. Ladies and gentlemen, history does not stumble forward blindly. It unfolds with precision. The prophecy hidden for 0 years is not a relic of the past. It is a voice echoing into our present moment, whispering and shouting about the future of America. We live in a time when fear and division run rampant, yet the blueprint for truth and destiny is already before us. The question is, will we discern it, and will we have the courage to stand upon it? The prophecy reveals more than a prediction. It reveals a pattern. God always raises up leaders at specific moments in history, not perfect men, but chosen men to accomplish divine purposes. What seems like chaos in the world is not chaos to heaven. Nations shaking, economies wobbling, ideals trembling, yet out of the turbulence emerges a call for America to awaken. This prophecy points us to a sobering truth and an audacious hope, that we are not abandoned, that the future of this nation is not drifting, but divinely directed. Just as prophets of old declared eternal truths in turbulent eras, so this ancient revelation intersects with our time, and even with the figure of Donald Trump, not merely as a man, but as a marker in God's unfolding narrative. For 2,000 years, this prophecy lay hidden, untouched by human hands, as though sealed with an invisible lock only heaven could open. Imagine the centuries rolling by, empires flourishing, armies rising, kings falling, yet the words of this prophecy remained waiting in silence. That very silence is deafening, reminding us that time itself bends to God's will, not humanity's impatience. There is an aching weight in the thought. For generations, men and women sought answers, but were denied because the hour had not yet come. And here we are, standing at the very threshold of its unveiling, a moment not granted to them, but entrusted to us. There is both awe and trembling in realizing you live in the time others long to see. The seal of time is not a symbol of neglect, but of perfect precision, like an artist who waits until the canvas is ready for the final stroke. Every trial of history, every struggle of nations, every upheaval of kingdoms has been moving toward this unveiling. Emotional storms cannot change the appointed hour. Cries of despair cannot rush eternity's timing. When the seal holds, it is as if heaven whispers, "Not yet. Wait for it. The world is not ready." And indeed, we must picture the prophets and martyrs who believed, who prayed, yet never touched the fulfillment, trusting that one day their faith would give way to sight. That day, by divine orchestration, is now upon us in America's story. To grasp the seal of time is to feel the weight of destiny pressing on our own generation with an intensity unlike any before. Think of it, what was sealed for 2,000 years did not belong to Rome, nor Babylon, nor the medieval kings. It was reserved for you, for us, for this very hour in history's unfolding. That revelation carries a sobering gravity because it means we are not bystanders. We are the very generation chosen to open the pages of destiny written long ago. There is both terror and triumph in that thought, because it suggests history is not background noise. It is the stage on which you and I must now act. And when heaven itself places this moment in our hands, the question burns within, will we rise to it? The seal of time demonstrates that prophecy is never late, though it often feels like it tarries. God delays not because he is slow, but because he is masterfully exact. Feel the frustration of thousands who once wondered, "How long, O Lord?" and let it weigh on your heart. Their longing is our inheritance, the ache of centuries, the cry of persecuted saints, the blood-soaked prayers of martyrs. They echo in this moment, now finding their release. This is the unsealing of history, designed for a foreordained season. And though mankind always rushes forward in urgency, heaven never rushes. Heaven reveals right on time. The seal of time awakens us to the fact that we live not by chance, but by eternal schedule. You were not born randomly into this age. You were crafted to exist in the hour of unveiling. Feel that in the depth of your soul, the same God who once withheld this mystery has entrusted it to this generation. What was hidden is now clear, what was sealed is now breaking open, and though some may tremble at its implications, others will rise with boldness at its invitation. A 2,000-year silence erupts with relevance for today, and no distraction of culture can silence the words echoing now. When heaven declares the hour has come, no power on earth can keep the seal shut. Divine timing is the heartbeat of prophecy. It moves to rhythms beyond human comprehension. We crave immediacy, we design our calendars, and we strive to predict outcomes. Yet heaven orchestrates history based on plans set before the foundation of the world. Imagine trying to read a celestial symphony with human sheet music. Our notes stumble, but his melody never falters. This truth stirs both humility and awe, because it places us in the hands of a God who is never early, never late, but always exact. The ache of the unknown tests us, yet it also draws forth trust, because waiting on God is never wasted. It is preparation disguised as delay. When we rely on human guessing, we are enslaved to speculation. Forecasters, pundits, and prophets of doom all shout their versions of tomorrow. But divine timing silences the noise with one decisive moment. The world trembles when a leader rises unexpectedly or a turning point shatters expectations. But heaven does not tremble, it plans, it directs, it ordains the hour. That realization should dissolve fear, because what looks like chaos is actually choreography. The unseen hand of God has already woven today's disorder into tomorrow's masterpiece. And while human wisdom falters, divine timing reveals purpose precisely when it is meant to. Think of Abraham, promised a son but waiting decades, his body aching with age while the promise ripened unseen. Think of Joseph, trapped in prison cells, forgotten by men yet remembered by God, until the appointed time elevated him to power. Their stories were not delayed, they were timed. The parallels reach us now. America feels restless, grappling with uncertainty, turning impatient eyes toward leaders and headlines. Yet heaven whispers through the centuries, do not guess. Do not despair. Trust the hour I have determined. That whisper carries peace even in turbulence, because divine timing is the bridge between despair and destiny. Human guessing thrives on impatience, but divine timing thrives on perfection. When the moment arrives, no power can hinder it. When the moment is withheld, no force can hasten it. Emotional exhaustion comes when we measure God's plan by our own clock, but strength returns when we exchange our watches for His eternal calendar. Every pause prepares us, every silence refines us, every waiting room of history transforms us. This is the divine paradox, that while men lose faith when doors remain shut, God is aligning everything for a greater unveiling. And when the clock of heaven strikes, the doors open with unstoppable force. There is a holy security in knowing that divine timing governs America's unfolding story. Leaders rise at the exact moment ordained, nations shift when planned, events converge when heaven decrees. This is why fear has no rightful throne in the heart of the believer, because the author of time still holds the pen. In this age of frantic speculation, divine timing anchors us. We no longer need to guess where history is going, for the script has already been written. And though we may not see the whole play, we know the director has not lost control. Every mystery, every prophecy, every turn of history belongs to his appointed hour. A nation at crossroads is a nation standing with trembling feet upon holy ground, because every decision tips the scale of destiny. America now feels that pressure in her veins, divided hearts, clashing ideologies, and a storm of uncertainty shaking her very core. It is as though the compass spins wildly, and millions cry out, "Which path will we take?" This moment is not ordinary, it is extraordinary, because choices made here will echo into generations yet unborn. In times like these, prophecy does more than inform, it confronts. It forces us to see that indecision is itself a decision, and the cost of silence in such an hour can be greater than action itself. Throughout history, crossroads have always defined nation. Israel once faced Mount Carmel, torn between serving Baal or the Lord, until Elijah demanded a choice. Rome crumbled not because of enemies outside its walls, but because of decay and decisions within them. The pattern has always been this. When nations stumble to the crossroads, the next step determines survival or collapse. America is no different. She cannot flirt with both destruction and destiny. The prophetic word shines like a lantern, exposing the wooden path beneath our feet. Which turn will we choose? History leans in, angels record it, and heaven watches. The crossroads is not only national, it is profoundly personal. Every citizen becomes a participant, for this is not merely about governments and laws, but about hearts and souls. In moments of such gravity, neutrality vanishes. Everyone plants their feet somewhere. The path of moral courage or the path of compromise, the road of reverence to God or rebellion against Him. These are not abstract questions, they are the pulse of homes, families, and communities across the land. To shrug at such choices is to let the storm decide for you. Yet prophecy's unveiling demands courage. Voices must rise, convictions must deepen, and faith must be tested in the fire. A nation at crossroads feels torn apart by fear, but fear can also be a fuel that wakes us from slumber. We feel the trembling, we sense the stakes, and our hearts beat heavier because deep down we know this moment defines more than politics. It defines legacy. Fathers and mothers see it in the eyes of their children. Which America will they inherit? Will it be a land that upholds faith and freedom, or a land that dissolves into confusion and decay? These questions strike like lightning into the conscience, making us realize what is chosen today is inseparable from what is lived tomorrow. The crossroads is a place where hesitation feels seductive, yet it is deadly. To delay a choice is still to choose. Prophecy reminds us that the narrow road, though costly, leads to life, while the broad road, though comfortable, leads to destruction. America cannot walk both roads. The tension rips at our culture every day, yet it also clarifies the truth. To live divided is to fall defeated. The nation must decide, not tomorrow, not someday, but now. And though the decision brings shaking, it also brings promise, for crossroads are not only places of danger, they are openings for redemption, revival, and rebirth. Leaders are never accidents. They are instruments lifted in the symphony of God's timing, whether they realize it or not. Throughout history, heaven has placed individuals in positions of influence, not because they were flawless, but precisely because they were fitted for the moment. Think of Cyrus, a pagan king, yet called God's anointed to set his people free after 70 years of captivity. Think of Moses, a man with stammering lips, yet lifted to speak with authority before Pharaoh. America, too, has been given leaders not as random figures, but as tools in God's unfailing hand. Their rise is not secured by votes alone, nor brought down by critics alone. They are instruments, wielded for as long as the Master chooses. When we view leaders only through the lens of politics, we miss the deeper reality. These are vessels through which nations are steered. Trump, like rulers of old, is not defined solely by personal strengths or flaws, but by the role he represents in the script of history. It is staggering to realize that God wove personality, conviction, and controversy into a single figure as a signal to this generation. Leaders are mirrors of the cultural heartbeat, revealing what a nation treasures and what a nation tolerates. In this sense, they are messengers, whether willingly or unwillingly, pointing forward to divine fulfillment. To dismiss them as coincidence is to mock the orchestration of heaven itself. The pattern of Scripture reveals this again and again. Nebuchadnezzar humbled to declare the sovereignty of God, Esther crowned queen to secure her people, David elevated from shepherd's field to throne of Israel. None of these rises made sense to the crowd at the time, yet every one of them had divine fingerprints upon their story. Likewise, America's leaders appear in seasons of chaos not as chance actors, but as ordered players on the stage of prophecy. Their flaws may offend, their decisions may divide, yet their placement is no less intentional than the prophets or kings of old. In their raw humanity, God writes eternal purpose. Leaders as instruments also shatter the myth of neutrality. Either they draw a nation back toward God's path, or they accelerate it down the road to ruin. This reality provokes urgency, for it reminds us our leaders are not mere celebrities or policies. They are signs. Their governing leaves fingerprints on morality, economics, faith expressions, and even cultural conscience. Every decree, every law, every rise or fall in their influence becomes a thread woven into prophecy's fulfillment. And when those threads come together, we see more than governance. We discern the outline of God's hand at work. This truth also ignites hope, because it shows us that no matter the uproar of politics, the throne of God is never shaken. Leaders come and go, elections are won and lost, approval ratings rise and fall, but the divine purpose for a nation remains unbroken. A flawed leader can still become a tool for divine correction, and a bold one can spark restoration. The point is not perfection, it is placement, and in every placement the sovereign God of prophecy reminds us that human leadership, though limited, is still harnessed to eternal plans. When we see leaders that confound us, we must remember they are instruments in the score only heaven fully hears. Hope is not the absence of shaking, it is the anchor we cling to while the ground beneath us trembles. America today feels the rumble, institutions shaking, voices clashing, values crumbling, and the very identity of the nation tested in fire. That shaking is not meaningless. In Scripture, shaking always came to remove what was weak, so that what was unshakable would remain. It is terrifying to watch systems collapse, leaders stumble, and culture fracture, yet in that very trembling we also hear the sound of renewal being born. The shaking is severe, but it is not final. It is not the closing of America's story, it is the refining of America's soul. The prophets of old warned of this rhythm. God shakes nations to awaken them. Babylon shook, Assyria shook, even Jerusalem shook under divine weight, but always with the invitation to return. And when they did, beauty followed ashes. In America, the cracks we see are not only signs of judgment, they are signals of mercy, for mercy comes disguised in disruption. A nation too comfortable will never find its knees, but a nation brought to trembling has hope of remembering its foundation. The shaking rattles us awake, drives us back to the eternal, and clears away idols we once thought immovable. This is why, in shaking, despair is optional, but hope is essential. Hope blooms even in chaos because it is rooted in something unmoved by earthquakes, God's eternal kingdom. When governments shake, His throne does not. When economies falter, His provision does not. When morality collapses, His truth does not. This realization shifts our fear into faith. The more violently the ground shakes, the clearer it becomes where our true foundation lies. Instead of being swallowed by panic, we are invited to clasp tightly to the one who will not be shaken, and in that embrace we discover that even trembling times can be times of strengthening. What feels like breaking is often the moment of pruning, and pruning prepares for future flourishing. The shaking is not designed to destroy what is essential, but to preserve it. Families feeling the pressure, churches gripped by uncertainty, citizens bracing for tomorrow, all of them stand as part of a great refining. Outwardly, it feels like a storm shattering windows. Inwardly, it functions as a furnace forging steel. It is painful, yes, but it is purposeful. And often only in shaking do we find courage we never knew, unity we thought impossible, and faith that finally matures from theory into fire-tested conviction. The shaking uncovers weakness not to shame us, but to rebuild us on something stronger, truer, eternal. Hope in the shaking reminds us that endings are never truly endings when God is involved. They are thresholds. America may appear to stagger, but prophecy shows us this very weakness can be the soil for revival. The same earthquake that topples idols also clears ground for altars. We may mourn over what is lost, but hope rejoices over what remains, declaring a future even more resilient. Every tremor is an invitation to cling, to believe, to rise again from the rubble with a resolve anchored in eternity. This is the paradox of shaking. It makes fragile things collapse, but gives eternal things their greatest clarity. In that clarity, hope takes root, and in that hope, a nation can be reborn. Courage is not born in comfort, it is born in conflict. And today, America stands in desperate need of men and women who will hear the trumpet of prophecy and answer the call to courage. The atmosphere is tense, fear swirls, uncertainty spreads, and opposition rises. Yet this is precisely the soil where courage must grow. It is the moment when silence becomes betrayal and hesitation becomes defeat. Courage is not the absence of trembling knees. It is the decision to keep moving even while they shake. At this crossroads, heaven is summoning a generation to stand, to speak, and to shine when the easier choice would be to shrink back. The call to courage tears away the illusion that someone else will take responsibility. Prophecy revealing this hour was not given for passive spectators. It was entrusted to active participants. You and I cannot outsource bravery. The battlefield of culture, faith, and freedom requires soldiers who will not merely admire truth but defend it. Courage is costly, yes, but cowardice costs far more, for when voices remain silent in the face of evil, darkness advances unopposed. History is filled with those who cowered and those who rose, but only the courageous change the course of nations. We must decide today to write our names among the latter. The power of courage is not found in skill, but in surrender. David did not face Goliath by boasting in strength, but by trusting in the God who never fails. Daniel stood tall in the lion's den not because he was fearless, but because his fear was anchored in a greater fear, the fear of God above men. These stories are more than history, they are living instructions to us now. Courage does not wait until the odds are fair, it rises precisely when the odds make no sense. And if America is trembling, then this is not the time to shrink into comfort zones. It is the time to walk boldly into them, carrying heaven's light. Courage is infectious. One voice raised inspires another. One act of defiance against corruption sparks 10 more who refuse to bow. Fear multiplies quickly, but courage spreads even faster in the fire of conviction. This is America's moment to remember that destinies shift when even one person dares to believe that God is bigger than giants. The trembling is real, the danger undeniable, but courage transforms disaster into deliverance. And while critics mock, while enemies threaten, while doubters scoff, courage presses forward anyway. That kind of courage is not just an act, it is a movement. The call to courage strips away mediocrity and awakens destiny. It challenges us to rise not tomorrow, not someday, but now. It will cost reputation, comfort, and even safety, but it will birth a legacy no one can erase. Courage turns fear into faith, hesitation into conviction, and weakness into testimony. And when a nation answers the call, it does more than survive, it thrives, it rises, it ignites revival. The trembling hour America faces is only unbearable if courage is absent. But with courage, shaking becomes strengthening, fear becomes fuel, and prophecy becomes history fulfilled. Destiny is not drifting, destiny is directed. America's destiny is not dangling by the threads of politics, culture, or even economic strength. It is tethered to something far more unshakable, eternity itself. When we look only at the turbulence of today, despair whispers loudly, convincing us the future is bleak. But prophecy shouts louder, declaring that beyond the storms of history stands the steady hand of God's eternal plan. This truth is oxygen to weary hearts. The destiny of nations may be contested by men, but it is never beyond the authority of heaven. And when destiny is anchored in eternity, collapse is not final. It is preparation for renewal. Think of ships tossed violently on raging seas. Without an anchor, they drift into despair, dashed by waves. But drop the anchor deep, and even though the storm rages, the vessel holds in place. So it is with America. The winds of division are fierce, and the waves of cultural upheaval pound day and night. But prophecy reminds us the anchor has already been cast into eternity. We are not tethered to fragile anchors of public opinion or human strength. We are secured to the eternal God whose purposes cannot be broken. The storm will roar, yes, but the nation's destiny is not to be lost at sea when the anchor holds firm. Throughout Scripture, every prophecy points to this truth. Eternity governs time. God lifted Israel from Egypt at his appointed hour, restored them after Babylon, and brought forth Christ in the fullness of time. None of these events drifted on chaos. They were calculated, eternal movements unfolding at the right moment. America's present struggle fits into this same eternal pattern. Though leaders argue, though powers collide, though uncertainty reigns, the destiny written in heaven is not erased. Eternal plans overwrite temporary anxieties, and though we often see history as fragments, prophecy reveals the whole design, a destiny carried not by chance, but anchored in the eternal. Eternity transforms our perspective of destiny. Instead of measuring success by temporary victories or defeats, we measure it by alignment with God's unshakable kingdom. America may stumble, but stumbling is not falling when eternity secures the outcome. This makes courage possible in the darkest valleys because we know valleys are not the end. They are pathways. To be anchored in eternity is to know that even in decline there is direction, even in shaking there is a future, even in uncertainty there is promise. That realization fuels endurance, turning fear into confidence and despair into expectation. Destiny anchored in eternity is not a call to passive waiting, but to active faith. Prophecy becomes a compass reminding us that America's story is meaningful, not meaningless. Every struggle pushes us closer to the unveiling of a higher plan. Every storm amplifies the need to trust what cannot be shaken. And though empires fall and cultures shift, eternity remains the spine of our destiny. This anchor does not loosen when times turn troubling. It grows stronger, pulling us closer to God's eternal design. This is America's greatest hope, that what is secured in eternity cannot be stolen in time. The prophecy hidden for 2,000 years is not a puzzle left to frustrate us. It is a beacon meant to guide us. America's story is still being written, and each of us holds a place within it. Do not look at the horizon with despair. Lift your eyes with expectancy. The same God who whispered hope to ancient prophets still speaks today. The same hand that shaped nations still steadies ours. Take courage, because prophecy is not about predicting fear, but declaring victory. And that victory is already unfurling before our very eyes.